The next sutta, 12.65, Savatthi. Monks, before my enlightenment, while I was still a bodhisattva, not yet fully enlightened, it occurred to me, alas, this world has fallen into trouble, in that it is born, ages and dies. It passes away and is reborn, yet it does not understand the escape from this suffering, aided by aging and death. When now will an escape be discerned from this suffering, aided by aging and death? Then, monks, it occurred to me, when what exists does aging and death come to be? By what is aging and death conditioned? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is birth, aging and death comes to be. Aging and death has birth as its condition. Then, monks, it occurred to me, when what exists does birth come to be? When what exists does existence come to be? Clinging, craving, feeling, contact with six sense bases, mentality, materiality. By what is it conditioned? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. And there is consciousness, mentality, materiality comes to be. Mentality and materiality has consciousness as its condition. Then, monks, it occurred to me, when what exists does consciousness come to be? By what is consciousness conditioned? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is mentality, materiality, nama-rupa, consciousness comes to be. Consciousness has nama-rupa as its condition. Then, monks, it occurred to me, this consciousness turns back. It does not go further than mentality, materiality, nama-rupa. It is to this extent that one may be born and age and die, pass away and be reborn. That is, when there is consciousness with name and form, and nama-rupa as its condition, and mentality, materiality, nama-rupa with consciousness as its condition. With nama-rupa as condition, the six sense bases, with the six sense bases as condition, contact, etc. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. Origination. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, true knowledge and light. I stop here for a while. So here the Buddha is repeating what he stated in other suttas, that he considered carefully, then he understood how suffering arises. And then he says here that consciousness turns back on this nama-rupa, because as I mentioned before, consciousness, vijnana, and nama-rupa, mentality, materiality, they arise together and cease together. They always come as a pair. You cannot have one without the other. So here it says that when you have nama-rupa, then you have vijnana. The condition for nama-rupa is vijnana. Similarly, the other way, the condition for vijnana is nama-rupa. So vijnana, consciousness, and nama-rupa, mentality, materiality, or here name and form, they depend on each other. Then, monks, it occurred to me, when what does not exist, does aging and death not come to be? To the cessation of what does the cessation of aging and death come about? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is no birth, aging and death does not come to be. The cessation of birth comes cessation of aging and death. It occurred to me, when what does not exist, does birth not come to be? When what does not exist, does existence not come to be? Clinging, craving, feelings, contact, six sense bases, nama-rupa. The cessation of what does the cessation of nama-rupa come about? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is no consciousness, mentality and materiality does not come to be. To the cessation of consciousness comes cessation of mentality, materiality. It occurred to me, when what does not exist, does consciousness not come to be? To the cessation of what does the cessation of consciousness come about? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is no mentality and materiality, consciousness does not come to be. With the cessation of mentality and materiality comes cessation of consciousness. Then, monks, it occurred to me, I have discovered this path to enlightenment, that is the cessation of mentality and materiality comes cessation of consciousness. cessation of consciousness comes cessation of mentality and materiality. With the cessation of mentality and materiality, cessation of the six sense bases, cessation of contact, etc. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. Cessation, cessation. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, true knowledge and light. So similarly, here the Buddha says, by considering carefully, he understood how there is cessation of suffering. Suppose, monks, a man wandering through a forest would see an ancient path, an ancient road, travelled upon by people in the past. He would follow it and would see an ancient city, an ancient capital that had been inhabited by people in the past, with parks, groves, ponds and ramparts, a delightful place. Then the man would inform the king or a royal minister, "Sire, know that while wandering through the forest, I saw an ancient path, an ancient road, travelled upon by people in the past. I followed it and saw an ancient city, an ancient capital that had been inhabited by people in the past, with parks, groves, ponds and ramparts, a delightful place. Renovate that city, sire." Then the king or the royal minister would renovate the city, and some time later that city would become successful and prosperous, well populated, filled with people, attain to growth and expansion. So too, monks, I saw the ancient path, the ancient road travelled by the perfectly enlightened ones of the past. And what is that ancient path, that ancient road? It is just this noble eightfold path, that is right view, right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right recollection, right concentration. I followed that path, and by doing so, I have directly known aging and death, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation. I have directly known birth, existence, clinging, craving, feeling, contact, six sense bases, mentality and materiality, consciousness, volition, their origin, their cessation, and the way leading to their cessation. Having directly known them, I have explained them to the monks, the nuns, the male lay followers and the female lay followers. This holy life, monks, has become successful and prosperous, extended, popular, widespread, well proclaimed among devas and humans. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says, just like somebody followed an ancient path and found an ancient city. So in the same way, the Buddha has rediscovered the Noble Eightfold Path, practiced long ago by Sammasambuddhas, perfectly enlightened ones of the past. Similarly, he has established the kingdom of the Dhamma again. 12.66. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Kurus, where there was a town of the Kurus called Kammasadhamma. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, "Monks, Noble Sir," those monks replied. The Blessed One said this, "Do you engage in inward exploration, monks?" When this was said, one monk said to the Blessed One, "Noble Sir, I engage in inward exploration." "How do you engage in inward exploration, monk?" The monk then explained, but the way he explained did not satisfy the Blessed One. Then the Venerable Ananda said, "Now is the time for this, Blessed One. Now is the time for this, Fortunate One." Let the Blessed One explain inward exploration. Having heard it from the Blessed One, the monks will remember it. Then listen and attend closely, Ananda. I will speak. "Yes, Venerable Sir," the monks replied. The Blessed One said this, "Dear monks, when engaged in inward exploration, a monk explores thus the many diverse kinds of suffering that arise in the world, headed by aging and death. What is the source of this suffering? What is its origin? From what is it born and produced? When what exists, does aging and death come to be? When what does not exist, does aging and death not come to be?" As he explores, he understands thus the many diverse kinds of suffering that arise in the world, headed by aging and death. This suffering has body as its source, body as its origin. It is born and produced from upadi. When there is upadi, aging and death come to be. When there is no upadi, aging and death does not come to be. Here the translation for upadi is acquisition. Acquisition. This follows the commentaries. But then the word upadi means basis for rebirth. Sometimes they say substratum for rebirth. Another translation of upadi in the Pali Sutta I checked is attachment. So this suffering has attachment as its source. Here it says acquisition. Acquisition is don't seem to be such a good translation. This suffering has attachment as its source, attachment as its origin. It is born and produced from attachment. When there is attachment, aging and death comes to be. When there is no attachment, aging and death does not come to be. He understands aging and death, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading on that is in conformity with this cessation. He practices in that way and conducts himself accordingly. This is called a monk who is practicing for the utterly complete destruction of suffering, for the cessation of aging and death. Then, engaging further in inward exploration, he explores thus, what is the source of this attachment? What is its origin? From what is it born and produced? When what exists, does attachment come to be? When what is absent, does attachment not come to be? As he explores, he understands thus, attachment has craving as its source, craving as its origin. It is born and produced from craving. When there is craving, attachment comes to be. When there is no craving, attachment does not come to be. He understands attachment, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading on that is in conformity with its cessation. He practices in that way and conducts himself accordingly. This is called a monk who is practicing for the utterly complete destruction of suffering, for the cessation of attachment. So here you see the cause of attachment is craving. This is just like independent origination. It also says that craving leads to attachment or clinging. Then engaging further in inward exploration, he explores thus, when this craving arises, where does it arise? When it settles down, upon what does it settle? As he explores, he understands thus, whatever in the world has a pleasant and agreeable nature, it is here that this craving arises when it arises. It is here that it settles when it settles down. And what in the world has a pleasant and agreeable nature? The I has a pleasant and agreeable nature in the world. It is here that this craving arises when it arises. It is here that it settles when it settles down. So too the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body and the mind have a pleasant and agreeable nature. It is here that this craving arises when it arises. It is here that it settles when it settles down. Monks, whatever ascetics and Brahmins in the past regarded that in the world with a pleasant, whatever ascetics and Brahmins in the past regarded that in the world with a pleasant and agreeable nature as permanent, as happiness, as self, as healthy, as secure. They nurtured craving. In nurturing craving, they nurtured attachment. In nurturing attachment, they nurtured suffering. In nurturing suffering, they were not freed from birth, aging and death. They were not freed from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. They were not freed from suffering, I say. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins in the future will regard that in the world with a pleasant and agreeable nature as permanent, as happiness, as self, as healthy, as secure, they will nurture craving. In nurturing craving, they will nurture attachment. In nurturing attachment, they will nurture suffering. In nurturing suffering, they will not be freed from birth, aging and death. They will not be freed from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. We will not be freed from suffering, I say. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins at present regard that in the world with a pleasant and agreeable nature as permanent, as happiness, as health, as healthy, as secure, they are nurturing craving. In nurturing craving, they are nurturing attachment. In nurturing attachment, they are nurturing suffering. In nurturing suffering, they are not free from birth, aging and death. They are not free from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. They are not free from suffering, I say. So here the Buddha is saying that craving arises when whatever is pleasant and has an agreeable nature, craving arises. And where is that? That is in the six senses. The eye when we see pleasant forms, in the ear when we hear pleasant sounds, etc. Now the Buddha comes with a very interesting simile here. Suppose, monks, there was a bronze cup of a beverage having a fine color, aroma and taste, but it was mixed with poison. Then a man would come along, oppressed and afflicted by the heat, tired, parched and thirsty. They would tell him, "Good man, This beverage in the bronze cup has a fine color, aroma and taste, but it is mixed with poison. Drink it if you wish. If you drink it, it will gratify you with its color, aroma and taste. But by drinking it, you will meet death or deadly suffering. Suddenly, without reflecting, he would drink the beverage. He would not reject it, and thereby he would meet death or deadly suffering. So too monks, whatever ascetics and Brahmins in the past or in the future or at present, regard that in the world with a pleasant and agreeable nature as permanent, as happiness, as self, as healthy, as secure. They are nurturing craving. In nurturing craving, they are not free from suffering, I say. I'll stop here for a moment. So you see this simile the Buddha gives is a very striking simile. Somebody comes along, he's very hot and he's very tired and he's very thirsty, extremely thirsty. Then people give him a fine cup with an excellent drink inside. It has a very fine color, excellent smell and taste. But unfortunately it is mixed with poison like cyanide. So he is told, this is an extremely nice drink. It will satisfy your thirst, it will satisfy your taste buds, everything. But if you drink it, you are going to die. So this fellow is so tired and he's so thirsty, his mind already blur, as we say. So out of thirst, he just drink that thing. And after that, he will have to pay for it. He have to suffer before he dies. And after he dies, don't know where will he go for rebirth. So a lot of people in this world, we are like that. We come into this world with all the craving for sense, pleasures. We want to see beautiful forms. We want to hear beautiful sounds, smell, taste. Taste is a very strong attachment. Food, touch is sex. And mind is like taking drugs. They feel happy. So a lot of people like that. We are attached to drugs or we are attached to liquor. We know liquor is bad, but because our mind is blur, we still consume it. So this is a very striking simile. We know that something is bad for us. It is poison to us, yet we drink it. Only yesterday, one of our supporters was telling me the brother is a chain smoker, has for many years been chain smoking. But recently, his kidney is giving up, other parts of his body giving up. Recently, he went to the hospital, stayed one night, came out, still refused to let go of his cigarette. After a few days, went back into hospital, stayed 1 week. After staying 1 week, then he felt the suffering. Came back and he threw away his cigarettes and gave up smoking. So that's a thing about many of us. We know that something is bad for us, and yet we cannot kick the habit because our mind is weak, because our mind is blur. Then when we experience enough suffering, then only we are willing to kick the habit. Monks, whatever ascetics and Brahmins in the past regarded that in the world with a pleasant and agreeable nature as impermanent, as suffering, as non-self, as a disease, as fearful, they abandoned craving. In abandoning craving, they abandoned attachment. In abandoning attachment, they abandoned suffering. In abandoning suffering, they were free from birth, aging and death. They were free from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. They were free from suffering, I say. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins in the future will regard that in the world with a pleasant and agreeable nature as impermanent, as suffering, as non-self, etc. They will abandon craving. In abandoning craving, they will be free from suffering. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins at present also in the world regard whatever with a pleasant and agreeable nature as impermanent, as suffering, as non-self, they will abandon craving. Abandoning craving, they are freed from suffering. Suppose, monks, there was a bronze cup with a beverage having a fine color, aroma and taste, but it was mixed with poison. Then a man would come along, oppressed and afflicted by the heat, tired, parched and thirsty. They will tell him, "Good man, this beverage in the bronze cup has a fine color, aroma and taste, but it is mixed with poison. Drink it if you wish. If you drink it, it will gratify you with its color, aroma and taste. But by drinking it, you will meet death or deadly suffering." Then the man would think, "I can quench my thirst with water, wheat, porridge or soup, but I should not drink that beverage, since to do so would lead to my harm and suffering for a long time." Having reflected, he would not drink the beverage, but would reject it, and thereby he would not meet death or deadly suffering. So two monks, whatever ascetics and Brahmins in the past, in the future, at present, regard that in the world with a pleasant and agreeable nature as impermanent, as suffering, as non-self, as a disease, as fearful. They are abandoning craving. In abandoning craving, they are abandoning attachment, etc., and they are freed from suffering, I say. That's the end of the sutta. So here, this man also is very hot and tired and extremely thirsty, and they offer him this fine drink, extremely delightful drink, but with poison mix. And then he would think, instead of drinking this, which I have to suffer if I drink it, I can still quench my thirst with water or soup. So he refuses to drink that. He drinks something not so tasty, and so he does not have to suffer for it. So in life also, if we are smart enough, use our wisdom, sometimes we don't have to go for the best things in the world. We compromise because we see sometimes you overindulge yourself, you have to suffer for it. So we are willing to give up the enjoyment because we see that it's not worth it. That only a person with wisdom can do that. Time does not permit me, I think, to finish the other suttas in this Nidana-samyutta. There's only, I think, there's only 3 suttas left in the Nidana-samyutta that I want to read, to go through. But we'll have to do it tomorrow. Anything to discuss? When you look into the suttas, we find that the Buddha has a tendency to repeat. Probably he feels that by repeating, it will stick into our mind. Because if we listen to something once, it doesn't stick in our mind. So, although it sounds a bit tedious, but the more we repeat, the more we remember. That's why during the Buddha's days, the Buddha's disciples had to memorize the suttas. Had to keep chanting the suttas, or this type of suttas, and they chant in the local language, so they understood exactly what they chanted. Because there were no books, they had to do this repetition. What page is that?
Page 599.
599. This one is it's not very clear even to me. The commentary just says it is the rebirth consciousness. Let me see. That's 168. It says the king represents karma, the criminal, the worldling. The 300 spears rebirth consciousness. Now why does it say 300 spears represent rebirth consciousness? Because rebirth consciousness is supposed to be only one. The time the king gives his command is like the time the worldling is driven towards rebirth by king karma. The pain from being struck by the spears is like the resultant suffering in the cause of existence once rebirth has taken place. What I interpret this to be is that this embryo, the consciousness comes into the embryo, and then once the embryo is conscious, then in the womb it feels all kinds of sensation, like when the mother is moving, the embryo feels pain. When the mother is taking food, also it might feel the food is hot or the food is too cold. Then you will also feel pain. So all kinds of sensations come because it is conscious. So this consciousness makes him suffer because he's conscious of all the surrounding. It's like being struck by the spears. And why is he a criminal? Because he's caught. So this consciousness is caught in the embryo. He cannot run away. He's caught in there. And he cannot do anything because they're just like the criminal tied up. So this consciousness is caught in the embryo. He cannot get out of the embryo. And the consciousness impinges on him like the spears poking him. So also after being poked by the spears, the criminal is half dead. King see, is he still alive? Still alive, poke him some more. So in the same way, this embryo is half asleep. He wants to sleep, but the consciousness keeps poking him. So he's like a semi-conscious, and the consciousness, each time the consciousness comes and pokes him, probably that. Good of you to ask the question, so we explore it together. Any other thing? Yeah. Thought itself is the object of the mind organ. Okay. But what is your object of meditation? Breathing, then you continue noting your breathing. No? You see, when we are meditating, we, in the Buddha's teachings, when we meditate, our aim is to attain one-pointedness of mind, because it's mentioned in the Majjhima Nikaya, the type of meditation praised by the Buddha is the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. So it's not like nowadays people say in meditation you practice vipassana, contemplation. Not really. In meditation we try to sharpen our mind. When we are not meditating, then we can practice contemplation. For example, when you study the suttas and then you contemplate. But in meditation itself, you are trying to sharpen your mind, trying to attain the jhanas. So you go back to this object of meditation. But sometimes for some people, he cannot see that object of meditation. Maybe say like the breath, he's contemplating on the breath. After some time, the breath has become so fine and the mind has become tranquil that he does not see the object. He cannot see the breath. And the mind is in a tranquil state and he doesn't know what to do. In that case, you can change your object of meditation to focus on this awareness itself. Because in that tranquil state, you have only this awareness, this knowing in your mind, right? Nothing else. So you can examine this knowing, because this knowing is the source of that I. Whenever you feel I exists, it is in this knowing, this awareness in your mind. So you examine that awareness, that knowing mind. You can stay with it, or you can try to examine where does it come from. Try to look for the origin of this knowing. This one, you have to look into the sutta. The Buddha has spoken the sutta, in the Majjhima Nikaya, how to get rid of the asavas. So there are many ways, like thinking of something different, thinking of something pleasant. You can also do chanting. Chanting is keeping your mind collected. It's practicing sati. So if you do chanting like Namo Tassa, some people have a very scattered mind. So if a person has a very scattered mind, it's good to keep it concentrated by doing chanting. Chanting actually is a very good practice. Every time we chant, our mind has sati. It's not a scattered mind. So if you don't allow your mind to think of this and think of that, then it does not go back to your old habits. Yes, but if a person has seen the Dhamma, then he understands how his behavior is different from others. So he will not associate so much people who are too different because they don't understand him or her. So you associate with people with similar interests who are similarly interested in the Dhamma. So, because worldly people will think you have become queer funny. You don't want to enjoy this, you don't want to enjoy that. So that's a price we have to pay Yeah, Arahant will not want to live with people. He will go and hide himself in the jungle. Mm. 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 Of course Even for a cultivator, you spend a lot of time in a cave, dwelling in the cave. People also think you're selfish. But then you see, there are many arahants having done their work. They either come back to teach or the Dhamma, or they gather disciples and teach them the holy path, like the Buddhas and many arahants. But if a person has not cultivated himself and he thinks he wants to help others walk the Bodhisattva path and all these things, if he has a lot of defilements, very soon people will have no respect for him. Because when a person does too much, it happens very often that the person becomes burned out. So when the person becomes burned out, his anger rises, all these defilements arise. Because many years ago, one of our devotees told me he used to follow one Mahayana monk, and this Mahayana monk likes to do a lot of activities. And the more the Mahayana monk, the more activities he does, the more his defilements come up. So this lay person told me that he left the monk because he became disillusioned. That's the result. Unless we have cultivated ourselves to a certain extent, when we try to extend ourselves by doing this and doing that, it's risky. That's why in the suttas, the Buddha always says, even if we spend time learning the Dhamma or teaching the Dhamma or repeating the Dhamma, we always must find time to meditate, to calm down our mind. That's why, like our monastery, we always have at least 4.5 hours of group meditation, so that we can calm down our mind, maintain our tranquility. Kami transfer merit.